So yeah, first thing we're going to do is make the pastry. I make the pastry first because I chill it first. And I think that gives it a better consistency. So I've measured all my ingredients out already, but if you haven't done that, now is the time. The recipe called for what was it? It was 345 grams of plain flour and 175 grams of butter. The way I usually work is I have half the amount of fat, so half the amount of butter to the amount of flour. So that I tend to find that works out the best. I've got my flour already here weighed out. I'm going to sieve it as well. I find sieving flour. Turn that down. I find sieving flour makes a nice lighter pastry. I think whenever you're doing baking, sieving's a really good thing to do. It gets loads of air into there, and just makes the pastry how it should be. I think if you don't sieve it, sometimes it can make it just a bit too crusty and not crumbly. I like my short crust to be a bit crumbly. If you don't have a sieve, don't worry about it. It really doesn't matter. You can introduce air as you do in the making stage as well. So sift all that into here. And then I've got my butter already mixed up. The recipe I actually tend to use is Delia Smith's recipe, although she says for butter and for lard. Because this is vegan, I don't think lard's really the best way to go. So I'm using one called Vegan Block. I'll get the packet so you can see it. So I'm using this one, Vegan Block, which is the best. It's palm oil free as well. And that's available in the health food shop in Stirling, probably your local health food shop if you're not based in Stirling, and also in Sainsbury's, so you can get it in there too. And it is the best. So I put all of the butter into the bowl with the flour. I'm going to get your hands a bit dirty as well, but that's all cooking. And then I'm going to crumble the flour and the butter together. And you're going to keep on doing that until you reach a consistency where the flour and the butter have mixed into tiny little balls that will hold a shape, but will also crumble if you move it too much. Make sure you get that all mixed in nice and even and consistent. You don't want big bits of butter left. And also a couple of major tips with pastry is try not to overwork it. If you get your butter too warm, that will impact on how it turns out in the end. But don't overwork it. Less is more with this. With bread, you want to be kneading it for about 20 minutes or so. With pastry, as little as possible to achieve the results you want. You can see how that's all starting to crumble into one. Okay, let's get in there. See, it doesn't take too much as long as you work it nice and fast. And what I've also read in the past as well is if you wash your hands with really cold water before you start kneading it as well, because that keeps your hands nice and cool. To be honest, I never do that, but give it a try. What do you think? What I tend to do as well at this stage is I'll add some herbs into the pastry mix. If you want to add salt into it, you can do as well. My butter's salted, so I tend not to add salt into it. I think there's often too much salt in today's diets. And yesterday was Burns night, so I had haggis and gravy, and that was one of the salty. It was a salty meal, so I'm going to try and limit my salt intake today. It was a very nice haggis, vegan of course. Okay, so now you can see that that's pretty much holding its shape. If I turn it into, if I raise it into a peak, but it'll still crumble into my hands. I could probably go a little bit finer. So if at this stage you want to find any of the bigger clumps and just break them down, but I think I'm pretty happy with that right now. Okay, and then I just want to get some water. I'm going to get a mug and put some cold water. So I think the recipe for this one said 2 tablespoons. That's probably about right. You only want water enough to bind it together. So I've got just a mug here. I'm not going to be using all of that mug by any stretch. So I'm just going to pour a little bit in, about a tablespoon, and then work that around. And then I tend to just keep adding water until I've got a dough. See, that's already starting to stick up with just hardly any water in there. But I think I'm going to need just a bit more because it's still a bit floury down at the bottom of the bowl. And you want to add this, like if you add too much water, the pastry just won't turn out very nice at all. It'll just it'll become a soggy mess. So add water sparingly. You got to respect the water. And if you want to turn it out onto your work surface now as well, you can do and knead it. I generally don't because I think it takes a bit more cleaning up at the end. And anything that avoids cleaning up, I'm happy with. So we're getting a nice smooth ball of dough now, which will hold its shape. And also what you want to try and achieve, knead it quite firm, because what that's going to do is allow the gluten to do its thing in the flour. Now, I have made this gluten-free quite a few times. I used to live with a celiac, so I've made a few gluten-free versions with gluten-free rice. It does work absolutely fine, right? If you do it well, you can't really tell the difference. But what I do tend to find is if you're using the gluten-free flour, the pastry will always be more crumbly, and you sort of have to place it into the pastry dish like you're building a wall almost, with little bits and pieces of the dough. So now I'm pretty happy with that. Hardly took any time. There's a bit of springiness back when I push in the pastry. There's a bit of springiness, so it's not really like a bread dough. It's I guess it's because all of the fat in there is holding it together. How are we all doing? Everyone about there?
Just about.
Good stuff.
Just a wee bit flour.
Good. All right. If you've got a ball that's holding its shape and is quite nice and smooth, I'd call yourself done. If it's a little bit too crumbly still, add a little bit more water. If it's really wet, add a bit more flour. Okay. And what I would say now as well is, yeah, call it done now, and then we're going to chill it in the fridge. Okay. So what I tend to do is just put a plate on the top of my bowl there. If you want to wrap some cling film over the top of it, that's absolutely fine. Or wrap it in a plastic bag that you've got at hand that's nice and clean. And we're just going to put that in the fridge and let that chill. Ideally, you want that to be chilling for about half an hour or so, but 15-20 minutes will be fine as well. So all that's going to do is just allow the pastry to firm up a little bit and keep its consistency. So that goes in the fridge, and I'm just going to go and wash my hands real quick. Okay, now also might be a good time to preheat your oven. Now I'll do it in 5 or 10 minutes, but I'm going to do it now because if I don't, I'll forget. I usually cook pretty much everything around about 180 to 200. I think for the pastry, I'm going to keep it around the 180 mark. I think that's probably gas mark 6, potentially. Yeah, pretty much everything's on 200. But yeah, go for 180. You can always put it in a little bit longer because we're going to pre-cook the filling. So yeah, be fine on 180. Anyone need that in Fahrenheit? No, good, good.
Gas mark 4 to gas mark 6. I found out.
Is gas mark 4? Is it?
Yeah, gas mark 4 for 180 or gas mark 6 for 200.
Okay, if you're on a gas mark, go for about 4 then. Okay. So for the filling, you had a large list of ingredients. I'm going to stick to that as much as I have, which I think is pretty much all of it apart from the cauliflower. Instead of the cauliflower, I'm going to be using broccoli, and instead of the courgette, I'm not going to use anything. I don't have any. And also, another thing that I've had to do, you may or may not have had to, I didn't have any coconut cream in, so I'm using creamed coconut, which comes in a block, readily available anywhere, pretty much. And I put that in some hot water, so that's going to be diluting, and so I've got a cube in there. So that's going to dissolve into the water, and that's going to be my coconut cream. Again, if you don't have any coconut cream, you can, I mean, I've done it with just using water and tomatoes as the liquid base for the filling. So yeah.
I've got coconut milk. Does that work?
Coconut milk. What I would do with the coconut milk, because that's a bit more liquid, make sure when you open it, there's probably a skin on the top. So make sure that's all mixed in. Or in fact, yeah, do that because then you get a really weak solution. Only add half of it. Add that slow.
We're using a palm.
More liquid in the coconut cream.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm going to chop the veg first. I always start with an onion. So I've got a reasonably sized onion here. And that camera angles is hard to think about cooking workshops. I usually just top and tail that. Get the skin off. If you want to be really savvy, what you can do is save the skins and save all of your veg waste and make a stock from it. I'll explain that in a bit if anyone wants me to. I'm going to have to concentrate on one thing at a time for now. Cut it into smallish pieces. I tend to go a times that way. I find that I have 5 pieces in an onion. Just like that. I'm just gonna just mute people. I think we're getting a bit of feedback, so we're going to mute everyone, but please feel free to unmute if you want to ask the question. So I tend to start with a hard veg first. So I've got a couple of carrots as well, but they're only small, so 1 large carrot or a couple of carrots. So I'm going to peel these because these are really old and the skin on them is not so great. If you get organic, I tend not to always peel them actually if they're organic. Now I'm going to chop the ends off of the carrots. I'm very frugal, so again, if you're making a stock, you can save those bits and use them in a stock. And aubergine takes, I like my aubergine really, these are all pre-washed by the way. I like my aubergine really well cooked. I like it to fall apart. So I'm going to put that in nice and early too. And I'm going to cube that. I'm going to start my pan heated now as well. So I'm going to put the pan on sort of a high medium heat, and then I might turn that down a little bit because because I'm on an electric cooker, it takes quite a while for it to heat up. So I usually put it on a high heat to start off with, and then it'll cool down. But if you're on an induction hob or a gas hob, then you're winning in life. You want to get a pan heated, and now you want to put your sunflower oil. I'm actually using rapeseed oil, but any sort of non-strong flavored vegetable oil is fine. Rapeseed, sunflower oil, anything called vegetable oil, butter, or whatever you want to use really. You could even use coconut oil at this stage if you wanted to. That's quite a strong flavor. If you're, because we're making this kind of like a curried kind of a flavor, we're using more exotic ingredients. But if you wanted to make something a bit more, let's say, British traditional, you might not want the coconut and the curried flavor to be coming through that. Just substitute out, use herbs. I tend to find if I want something traditional, I use a load of rosemary. I think rosemary gives it that, rosemary, sage, that sort of thing gives it quite a nice, more traditional flavor. But like I say as well, you can use like a stock with tomatoes as your sauce for the filling as well.
I'm putting some passata, some crushed tomatoes in as well. I don't know if people can see me. But...
I'll just spotlight your video there.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just putting some crushed tomatoes in just to kind of bulk it out.
Oh, yeah, that works. Yeah, I've done that plenty as well. What I tend to find with that is it gives it quite a strong. Like I tend to, if I'm using that, I might add a little bit of sugar in there, a bit of brown sugar, just to take the edge off it. Or I've got some of this. This was made by a friend of mine. Blackberry vinegar was made by a foraging friend of mine. Like a flavored sweet vinegar is always quite nice. I always think that sour is such an underrated flavor. So a bit of sourness in your cooking really gives everything a lift. A bit of balsamic vinegar possibly as well. Anyway, where were we?
But there's a bit of debate over whether or not honey's vegan.
Honey, yeah. Yeah, I guess that depends on your standpoint, really.
Yeah.
Okay. So I tend to add the onion first. So I'm just going to add all my onion into the pan. And what you're aiming for is a little sizzle. Mine didn't sizzle, so my oil's not quite hot enough, but it will not take long anyway now. I can feel the pan's warm, but the idea with fry, or the best thing for frying is a hot oil, and fry it for as little time as possible so it doesn't go all soggy. If you fry it nice and fast, a flash fry, you're locking a lot more of the nutrients and potentially the flavor as well, depending on the veg. See, that's starting to sizzle already. Hopefully you can see that. I've just got my onion in there now. I'm just going to stir that around, get it coated in the oil. Just the onion at the minute. So while that's cooking, I've got my carrots and aubergine ready to go in next. I've also got a green pepper. I'm going to put that in. At this stage, you're just cutting up whatever veg you're using. Doesn't matter what you've got. Go for the harder vegetables first. So if you're doing potatoes, you want those now. Carrots, Broccoli should actually be getting cut pretty soon as well.
What about the frozen ones?
Say again, sorry?
What about the frozen ones?
Frozen ones, if it's frozen peas, they can go in a little bit later. They don't necessarily need to go in right now. I've got my chili as well. I'm going to add a chili into this. The best way to de-seed a chili, if you cut the end off. So I've cut the stalk off of it there, and then roll it in your hands a little, and that'll loosen all the seeds. Make sure you've washed your hands thoroughly with soap and don't touch your eyes, because you'll know about it. And then I'm going to just slice down the back of it, slice down the middle so it's in two. And then open that up and then just use my thumb to take the seeds out. The reason you might want to de-seed it is because that's where all the spices, or that's where the majority of the spices. So these are quite hot chilies. I don't want it to be too overpowering. So I've just de-seeded it, and that will just take the edge off a little bit. I'll still get the chili flavor. If you're using a chili, that wants to go in now as well. I tend to put the chili in quite early. Spices always work in quite early. So just add the chili to the onion. See, that's sizzling away quite nice now as well. And now I think I'm going to add my carrots and my aubergine as well. We'll turn the heat down just a little bit on that. So now I'm on to number 4, which might be gas mark 4. I don't know. It being an electric, it might be an equivalent. I have no idea. Just 1 to 6 I've got on that. Okay, how's everyone doing? Any questions so far? I've got a direct message from Rachel Towers about would I part cook potato? You can do, yeah. If you cube it, the thing is, if you're going to cube it and go nice and small, it shouldn't need it, because the smaller you go, the faster it'll cook. So if you want to put potato in it, put it in quite small anyway, and then that'll fry up, and then it'll cook again once it's in the oven as well as a pie in itself. What I'm going to do though, because I'm going to make some wedges, so I've got a large potato that I'm going to part boil so I can roast it. Secret to roast, or one of my secrets to roast, is part boil the potatoes and then make sure it goes into a really hot oil. Okay, so I've got my potatoes wedged. These are for the side, these aren't for the pie. So they're going to go into a separate pan. And also with potatoes, you want to put them in cold water. Oh, camera angle's bad. You want to put them into cold water and let the water heat up with the potatoes in there. That will ensure they cook a lot more even. So that goes into cold water. The dial broke on my cooker, so this is how I turn my my small cooker ring on. Small pair of pliers. I'll just get a lid for that. All right, this is cooking up quite nice now. I've got my carrots, my aubergine, and my onion in the pan there, and my chili. So now what I'm going to do is add some of my spices. Dried herbs and spices are best added in early as well. And you can always, what I tend to do is add a few in at the start and then top it up as we go. So I've got some cumin. I've got hardly any left in there, so I'm just going to throw all of that in. I tend not to really cook too much with strict measurements. I think some things you need to. If you're baking, it's worthwhile finding measurements and doing that. Bread, although I've made bread so many times now, I can sort of do it without the measurements. Cakes and things, If you measure the first thing, then just add so like butter, flour, and eggs. They're all the same sort of weight measurements. Pastry, if I measure the flour, then I'll half that and put the butter in. But other than that, I don't tend to measure out too many things. So things like the turmeric that I've got now, I'm just going to add that into it. Looks good. And you can't really go wrong with turmeric. It's got so many health benefits as well. Get into the end as well. And then I don't have any garam masala, but I've got this tandoori masala. So I think my pie is going to be a little bit on the spicy side. So I'm just going to add a dash of that in for flavor. And just stir that through. If you're adding mushrooms as well, if you've got mushrooms going in there, it's always a good idea. I should have said this earlier. It's always a good idea to boil your mushroom or heat your mushrooms up so all of the water comes out, and then add your flavors, because that water, all that moisture coming out of the mushrooms is flavor that's not getting used up. So you can send that out and then add your herbs and your spices, and the mushrooms will soak that flavor up and carry the flavor throughout the dish a lot more. I tend to find that's true also with the aubergine. There's a ton of moisture in aubergine. What you can do with the aubergine as well is put it on a plate and sprinkle it with salt, and that will take the moisture out as well. Leave that for 5 or 10 minutes. That will take some of the moisture out. So now I've got some broccoli. I should really have done that a little bit sooner, but hey ho. I quite like my broccoli to have a bit of a crunch anyway.
I'm just adding in some lentils and chickpeas as well at this point to give it a bit of vegan protein.
Nice, yeah. Yeah, I've got some chickpeas as well. Lentils is a really nice idea. Lentils is a really good thickener as well. Now, because I'm a little bit behind my schedule where I wanted to be with this, some of the veg is starting to stick to the bottom of the pan a little bit. I don't necessarily want to turn the heat down. So what I'm going to do is I could either add a little bit of water. I don't really want to add more oil, just for the health reasons. But I'm going to add just a little bit of the coconut cream in now. That's only to keep the bottom of the pan nice and wet so it doesn't burn and stick to it. I'm going to add the rest of that later. What you'll find as well is coconut cream, coconut milk will tone down the flavors a little bit. So with this being quite a bit more on the spicy side, that coconut milk is going to temper it down a little bit. And I'm going to add my chickpeas as well. You can save the water and do some interesting things with the chickpea water, but the last 2 times I've intended to do that, the chickpea water has just stayed in the fridge for 3 days and has gone bad. So I know my limitations. I've still not done my tax return for last year, so that's going to take my priorities right now. So I'm not going to bother saving the water, but find out what you can do with Aquafaba. You can do some quite nice things with it. And I'm only going to use half of this because I think if I use the whole lot, it'll be too much chickpea in the one pie. So I'm just going to use about half of that, and I'm going to make some hummus out of the rest of it tomorrow. I want the chickpeas to cook nice and through. Now I'm going to add my herb leaves as well, so coriander. Going to add that into the pan. Again, make any substitutions you want. Tarragon, parsley, rosemary, anything you like. Yeah, find out what you like. I put cumin in pretty much everything I cook. I tend to put mixed herbs in quite a lot of the things. and sumac as well. I tend to use quite a bit of sumac, which is quite a nice. It's from the bark of a tree, and it's kind of like almost like a tomatoey with a little bit of zing, bit of zest. No, that works quite nice. If you want to make something Middle Eastern, that's a really nice thing to put in there. Again, readily available from anywhere. How's anyone doing? Everyone doing? You all good? Yeah. Good. Nice. Thumbs up. Good.
Chris, I realised I didn't have a big enough pan, so I've now split mine in two over 2 frying pans.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. What I often do, especially if I'm cooking for a lot of people, is I'll maybe make 2 separate pies anyway. So two different pans going. So chop all your veg together, but chop twice of everything. I tend to like to make a mushroom pie, and then also like a mixed vegetable pie. But yeah, as long as it all ends up in the same place, it's all good. I just found a couple of beetroots that I was going to use as well, but I forgot to put them in, and I don't think I'm going to add them now, but I'll probably just roast them with the potatoes instead, or some roast beetroot as well. Final thing I'm adding now is my my green pepper, bell pepper. I'm just going to put that in there. If you want to add any leaves like cabbage or whatever, that probably wants to go in. Maybe now, maybe yeah, probably now for a cabbage. If you're adding something like spinach, put that in right at the very end. Let that wilt inside the oven. So just to recap, I'm going to turn the heat down on my pan again just a little bit. In fact, now I'm going to add my coconut cream or coconut milk or whatever you've got. Now the thing is, with this, you need to keep stirring it. I didn't, so I've got coconut cream down at the bottom of the mug there. So that's not a problem. That'll disappear as I stir it through.
Chris, how much coconut cream are we supposed to be using?
It said a carton, which I didn't find massively helpful.
Because my carton was like yours, it had to be diluted.
Okay, I've used
I've ended up with half a litre of coconut cream.
half a litre. Okay, that's probably a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Save the rest of it and make yourself a coconut curry tomorrow. Make a korma, add some almond flour or whatever flour, gram flour. So I used a mug about this big, so that's just a regular coffee cup size mug. I think I'm going to have to add more liquid, so maybe like a mug and a half or so of coconut cream.
Oh, okay.
Good.
Okay.
But I mean, you can always keep adding. It's harder to take away. Well, not necessarily harder to take away. You could always just use a ladle, but it's easier to add than it is to take away. So just add a mug at a time. I'm going to have to put more liquid in there because I don't really have time to be diluting the coconut, the creamed coconut now. I'm just going to add water. What you can do as well at this point, if you wish, is add a milk. I've got rice milk here, so you could add some rice milk. I tend to find almond milk makes everything have a little bit of a weird sweetness if I'm trying for a savory dish. So for cooking, I tend to like oat milk. I think oat milk and oat cream is the king for cooking with. But rice milk's a little bit more benign. It's not quite as sweet. Also, Wendy says the coconut milk was 250 ml. Thank you. That sounds about right. Yeah. Again, I guess it depends on how big your pan is and how big you want your pie. So I'm going to add a little bit of rice milk just to add a bit more liquid. I don't want it too liquidy, but I think I might have overdone that. See, I've got a little bit too much liquid down in the bottom of there. Oops. And on my phone. Oh, and I'm calling. This phone's taken some abuse. It's got a cracked screen. I've now just spilled pie mix on it. That's at least solved one problem in that it's not quite liquidy enough now. So that's all good. That's one way you can remove the liquid. So I'm just going to let that simmer a little bit, just to let the chickpeas heat through. And while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to make some space so I can start rolling out the pastry mix. So feel free to chat, talk about your day, talk about your favorite culinary skills or whatever. Did anyone make a haggis yesterday for Burns night? Or anyone have haggis? No.
I had a short-bought vegan haggis.
Nice.
Rosie, short-bought vegan haggis.
Was it good?
Yeah, you had it.
Yes.
We had haggis on Sunday because, well, my mom thought this was just like for like a normal dinner. And we're like, Mommy, that's for Burns night. And then she was like, what? And then we were like, for Burns night, which have a Burns night.
Gotta be done. Gotta be done. Okay, coming back to my potato wedges here. So I've got they're part boiled, not. I don't want the fork to go in nice and easy, but I probably want it to go in a little bit easier than that. It's only just started boiling, so boil it for about 5 minutes or so if you're doing that. Otherwise, now would be a decent time to start making your sides. If you're gonna, like me, I'm going to start preparing my roast beetroot. So to do that, I'm just going to cut it and peel it like I would a carrot. You can roast carrots this way, nice and easy. Pretty much anything. Oh, we've forgotten a really key ingredient. Garlic. Need garlic in this. Garlic makes the world go round. So I'm just going to peel this. So if you got your garlic ready, now would be a good time to start cutting that. And then that's going to go into the pan. It's always best to add garlic late in the dish. You don't want to add that too early. Because if you add it too early, you kill all the garlic flavor. Garlic's always best done towards the end. I always find recipes always say fry the mushrooms for 5 minutes and then fry the garlic for 5 minutes. If you want that kind of burnt garlic flavor, then that's okay. But I always find that they ask for the garlic too early, in my humble opinion. So the best way I found for peeling garlic is, let's see if you can see me. Take both ends off, and with the back of the knife, crush it down, and then the skin comes right off. And then you can either use a garlic crusher to crush this into the sauce, or I tend to just chop it nice and fine. And then that'll melt through the filling. And I'll add that into my everything's backwards. Add that into my pie mix. And you can see the sort of consistency that we've got there. I've got quite a bit of liquid down in the bottom there. If I want to thicken that up, I can add a little bit of flour. Corn flour is quite good for thickening that up. But be aware with corn flour, it will remove some of the flavor. So use that sparingly. Could also just use regular plain flour as well. That'll be fine. And also, if you want to, you can use xanthan gum, which you can buy in most supermarkets. That's like a vegan, what's the word I'm after? Kind of a gelling agent. It's not a gelling agent, but it's similar. Helps things stick.
A thickener.
Sorry?
A thickener.
Thickener, that'll do, yeah. So that can be used. That's got a bit of a sharp flavor to it. So yeah, experiment, get used to a few different things. I think for this one, what I need to do actually, what you should all do, what you should get in the habit of doing as you're cooking, is taste as you go. So that's quite coconutty. Getting the spice as well. Oh yeah, the spice is really coming. So I think it definitely needs more coriander. Definitely going to put some more coriander in that. And it needs something else as well. I think I'm going to go with the elderberry vinegar. Sorry, blackberry vinegar. Again, at this point, you could add some balsamic vinegar or cider vinegar will lift it quite nice as well. So maybe 2 teaspoons or so of the vinegar. And that'll cut through the coconut milk's giving it a bit of a sweetness. So that's going to lift that and give it cut through a little bit more and give it a bit more of a different dimension. Stir that through, make sure that's gone all the way through. Now these potatoes are probably going to be part boiled enough. So I'm going to turn the heat off on them. I realise that wasn't really in the description there, so I apologise for that, but I'm making my dinner at the same time. So. For the potatoes, another key, part boil and in hot oil. So put the oil on the dish, put the dish in the oven. I'm going to let that oil heat up for a few minutes, and then that'll really make the potatoes sizzle as it goes in. Now I'm going to see what that vinegar's done to the pie mix. Yeah, that's improved it a lot. Still too much liquid, so I'm just going to grab some flour and add that into there to thicken it up a little bit. So I think it can use getting tempered a little bit, so I'm going to use corn flour. So that will thicken it, but it's going to also reduce some of the flavor. So there's 2 ways of doing this. You can dissolve the corn flour into water, and that will thicken the sauce up. But because I don't need to do it too much, I'm just going to sprinkle it in reasonably evenly around the pot, and then that's going to need quite a bit of stirring to break it all up and get it nice and evenly distributed around the pan. If you keep it on the heat as well, all that water evaporating off the heat is going to essentially thicken the sauce as well. All right, next stage, you're going to need a large surface on your work surface to roll out the pastry, and a rolling pin or any such improvised device that will do the same job. So a rolling pin or a nice big bottle. I'm just going to clear my workspace here for that same reason. So now I've turned off the heat on my pan, on my pie filling pan, because I think it's probably cooked through enough at this stage, but I'm keeping it on the hot ring, so so some of that liquid's still going to boil off. Now, I haven't yet found anything that doesn't go in a pie. If you like a vegetable, put it in there. Really doesn't matter. That corn flour's thickened that up quite nice. Probably just one tad more. So now this is where the camera angles might not work in my favor so well, because I don't have much workspace in my kitchen. So I'm going to try and do it around about here, where I there. And hopefully that's going to be enough room for my computer's right on the edge of the top now. So yeah, that should be enough. So get some flour. By the way, as well, talking about flours, don't use a bread flour because it'll make your pastry taste like as much as bread flour is good and bread's good. I don't like my pastry tasting too much of bread. I think a plain flour or a wholemeal flour, a buckwheat or anything, most flours will work. And like I say about the gluten-free flours as well, it does work exactly the same way as I've shown you today so far. It will just have a different consistency when you're putting it in the pie dish. It won't roll quite as well. But any whole wheat flour and blending flours as well is fine. So you could put some wholemeal flour and some white flour in the same one. That works absolutely fine as well. You get a good quality wholemeal flour. It really is beautiful. Make some beautiful pancakes as well with wholemeal flour. So just dusting the work surface there. If you've got a large tray, you can do it in a large tray as well. But just dust the surface, and then you want to get your pie mix, your pastry mixture out of the fridge. I'm just going to pause for a second and take the spotlight off and put it onto gallery view just so I can see everyone. Is everyone at the stage where they're happy with the filling? Is the filling complete? Yeah, thumbs up. Rosie, everything good? Yeah, good stuff. Okay. Are you okay, Molly? Oh yeah, you're not doing the pastry anyhow, are you?
We're fine.
Say that again?
We're good.
Good. All right, nice one. So now my sauce has thickened up quite a bit as well there now, so I'm quite happy with that. So I just put my. Can you spotlight me again, please, Molly? I just took that off. So I've got my worktop all flour dusted. Can you see that? Okay, someone shout out because of the angle of my laptop, I can't actually see the screen at the same time.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that's just beetroot. Don't worry about that. So I've got my pie mixture. In fact, I'm just gonna wait 1 second. Now I've got the oil nice and hot. I'm going to take my potatoes and get those roasted. One trick that my mum showed me as well to make them nice and fluffy and well, crispy. Stir them around with a fork a little bit as well, and that'll break the surface up a little bit. That makes the end result a lot nicer, a lot better. You hear that sizzle? That's what you want. And I've also got my my beetroot that's going to go in there too. If you're adding herbs to your roast as well, I tend to add them a little bit later because if you put them in now, they might burn and it'll make everything have a weird burnt flavour. So now I've got my cooled dough mix. Make it into a ball and spread it out a little bit there. We've got a disc and just try and get used to the camera angles here. Hopefully that'll work. And what I tend to do as well is get some flour on my hands and flour the rolling pin as well. Just make things go a lot easier. And then just roll out. No science to that. I tend to flip it over as well. So I'm rolling it out even, both sides, changing the direction of the pastry, change the direction of the roller. And I think you don't want it too thick. If it's too thick, it'll just go stodgy and won't be very good. And what you're hoping, see if it's worked okay, is when you roll it. I don't know if you can see, but as you roll it, it sort of springs back a little bit. That's what you want. And you need to move that flour around a little bit more. One thing I didn't do with this pastry that I usually do, I usually add a little bit of olive oil into the pastry mix as well. Gives it a tiny little bit more richness. But I totally forgot today. Guess I'm distracted. And you can reshape it as see, it's not coming out in the best circle. And also, if you want to make an apple pie, make the pastry in exactly the same way, just add a bit of sugar. Exactly the same way. Get my pie dish. So you want the pie to be a little bit bigger, the mix a little bit bigger, right around the circumference than the pie dish. We need a little more flour on that. But likewise, you don't want it too thin. If it's too thin, it'll just crisp up and burn, and you'll not have pie. You'll just have a bit of a mess. So I think that's probably thick enough now. Maybe about 5 millimeters or so thick, something like that. But don't be getting your micrometers out and making sure. It just needs to be somewhere around. You can, if your dish isn't as non-stick as you would like, you can put a little bit of oil in the dish now, and that'll help it come out later. This is quite a nice ceramic one, so I don't think I need to do that. Just got some beetroot in there. Now the way you want to do this, ideally as well. I don't know if anyone's ever seen these little ceramic balls, the pastry balls or pastry beans. I don't have them. I've never owned them. If you do lots and lots of baking and lots of crusts and pies, it might be worthwhile investing in some. They're really, really cheap. You can get them from like Pound Stretcher or B&M Bargains and things like that. But what they do is they push the dough down. We're going to do something called blind bake in a second. But I've never really done that. Never really found the need, because what I tend to find is if it's a thinnish pastry, you don't need to blind bake quite as long. So just a few minutes we'll do with this. So the easiest way to bring that pastry up now is get your rolling pin, and you're essentially rolling the pastry onto the rolling pin like that over the pie dish. You see, that's not really falling very nice, but it doesn't really matter. You can call that rustic. Make sure it's gone into the corners there. This is probably going to be an open pie, judging by how little excess I've got. And take your knife and just cut away the excess, just around the edge of the tin there. It's a good idea if you can. I didn't there. It's a good idea if you can to leave it overhanging a little bit on the edge, because well, I'll show you the reason for that in a second. So with the extras, I've got a gap here. So with the extras, I can just push that in, just join it back on again. Although you don't want to overwork pastry, and pastry will know if you're scared of it. No one ever told you that. Pastry always knows if you're scared of it, so show it who's boss straight away. It is still reasonably forgiving. So just got a bit of an overhang there on the edges most of the way round. So like I say, this is going to probably be an open pie because I don't really have enough pastry to go on the top there. If I had a smaller tin, that would work fine. Or if I made more pastry, that's also fine. You sort of get used to what you have. Okay, I think that will do me. So there's my pastry in the pastry dish. And I think it looks pretty good so far. So what I'm going to do now is put that in the oven, how it is without any filling, and that's the blind baking part. So what that's going to do is start cooking the inside of the pie of the pastry. So blind bake it for 3 to 5 minutes with this one, I think. What you'll probably find is the pastry will sink and sag a little bit, but I've got a little bit extra there that I can always put into the sides. And this is where the pastry balls are really good for. So you can put those in the bottom of the pastry dish, and that sort of keeps the shape of the pastry. And also what it will do is, as that's in the oven, the bottom of it's getting really hot. So it's going to bubble up almost because the heat is trapped between the air trapped between the pastry and the bottom of the dish. So that's going to lift that up. The pastry balls hold everything down, and you get a bit more of an even bake. Well, like I say, I've never owned them, but if you do a lot of baking, it's something that's possibly worthwhile investing in. Now's a good time. This is something that I preach but don't often do as well as I should. Now's a good time to clean up a little bit after yourself. So I'm just going to put a few things away. Feel free to chat or say what you found or what you if you've made a different pie or something different in the near past that you want to talk about. Feel free.
Chris, if we're putting spinach in, would we do you cook it at all, or do you just put it in just before you put it in the pie?
Because spinach wilts quite fast, you can get away with doing that just before it goes into the pie. But okay. If your pie filling's off the heat, then there's no problem putting it in now.
Right. Okay.
Do you think you can put butternut squash in instead of potato?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But that butternut squash, I find that a weird one. Like, it took me ages to get used to how long that takes to cook, because it feels like it should take forever to cook, but it really doesn't. So, yeah, absolutely. I've made quite a few butternut squash. Like pumpkin pie is pretty much the same thing.
It's really good grilled as well, just to have as a substitute.
Yeah, and that would be roasted as well, quite nicely. Yeah. Here's a question for everyone. What's the difference between roasting and baking?
Roasting's in oil?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah, roasting's using oil or liquid. So you can use like a jus or something to baste a chicken or a bird or whatever. Whereas bacon's in a dry heat, so no oil. Good. By the way, best hummus recipe I found. Chickpeas just like that, blend them up with some tahini and loads of garlic. Can't really go wrong. In fact, I would have always thought you can't go wrong with adding too much garlic, but me and my friend once made a hummus and it was literally the most garlicky thing. Like, it was more garlic than garlic. I couldn't believe it. tahini, and then a little bit of soya milk or something like that, and cumin. Add some cumin to it as well, maybe a bit of lemon juice. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to take my pastry out now. Now, second thoughts, I'm going to leave it just a minute longer, 1 minute. It's not quite as firmed up inside there as I hoped it would be. Okay, so I'm going to take my pie dish out now. So we've got to have everything cooked and finished for the New Year's meeting. So you can see there, it's fallen down just a little bit here. So I can probably just push that up. But that's given it a bit of a cooking on the inside here. If I were to add the pie mixture straight into that without doing any blind baking, all the liquid would just seep into there and it'll become a soggy, gloopy mess. So now I'm just going to spoon the filling into the pie, nice and even. And that's thickened up nicely now that that's been staying on the heat, so it's not too liquidy. If it's too liquidy still in the bottom there, just use something with holes in, like this spatula, and that'll make sure the liquid doesn't stay in. Okay, now mine's a, by the way, if you want to add things like tofu into here as well, that works just as well. There are no limits really. So press that down, make sure that's gone into all of the edges there. Because it's an open pie, in fact, I'm going to do my best. This is going to look like the world's most, I don't know what, it'll look weird, but I don't really care. It'll look rustic. There we go, pie top. Good enough. It allows me to show you what we're going to do. If you've got a
Chris,
pie,
Chris,
yeah.
I cut mine into this extra into rounds. I rolled it out and cut it into rounds.
Okay.
So I thought I would just place them on top.
Let me. I'll just spotlight that video.
That was the extra I had. So and I don't have any cutters. I just used a glass to cut them so I could place them on top.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, why not? Absolutely. Yeah, that'll give it a nice, I don't know, geometric shape. Yeah. You could also, if you wanted to as well, make it into a new ball and just put that over the top. But I think your idea like that's going to look really nice, actually. Yeah. Can you spotlight me again, please? Okay, so I've got this rice milk. Again, almond milk, oat milk, whatever will do the trick. And a brush. If you don't have a brush, just get a spoon. If you don't have any plant milk, then it's not really a problem. What this will do is just give it a nice glaze. So it'll just give it a finishing touch. So just with a brush, just going to brush that on. Thinking about it, I should have tried to do a transition Stirling logo on the top of this with the excess, but I think we would have been waiting here a long time. So any bare pastry, anything that's on the edges, on the sides, on the top, just going to brush that over. A bit crumbly. And it doesn't matter if you miss any, but it always makes it just look a little more even and consistent if you get it all. One of these brushes, very inexpensive, and if you do lots of baking, it's a useful thing. And if you want to oil tins as well, it can be a useful thing to have as well. It's a silicone one. You'll buy it once. That's going to outlive me easy.
Although having said that, when I have to butter a pie dish like this, I use my fingers.
Yeah, I usually do as well, actually. Because it's all the way over there, that brush. I have to walk all the way over here to take it out, and it's so heavy. Yeah, no, I'm the same. We're gonna do things proper on the proper workshop then.
Right. But your fingers, it's a one less thing to clean.
Say again?
It's one less thing to clean.
Indeed, yeah, absolutely. I'm all for that. So now that's just going to go straight into the oven, and we're only waiting for the pastry to cook on that. I've got my potatoes here, so I'm just going to give those a little stir. I think now's the time I might add some rosemary into that. Liberally sprinkle rosemary straight into the tin. I'm not going to add any salt to this now. I'm going to add some salt right at the end on this one, I think. Okay, and then we're going to wait 20 minutes or so. Now, I'm not going to expect you all to stay on here and just sit and wait. But check it periodically. I tend to check it after about 10 minutes just to see how it's doing. And because you want the bottom of the pastry to be cooked as well. Just looking at the edges might not necessarily give you you want it nice and well done on the edges of the pastry. And then you know that the bottom's cooked. So I'll probably leave that in for about 15-20 minutes or so. And then let it cool down for 5 minutes or so once it comes out of the oven, because it's going to be really hot. And if you let something cool down a little bit, the flavors start to come out a little bit more the cooler it gets. It's something to do with enzymes working. This is why things taste better the next day, because it's actually a biological process that's happening there that's making it do that. So let it cool a little bit. And I guess that's pretty much all we need to do. What I would really like for you all to do, I'm going to put you all on gallery mode again. What I would really like you all to do is send me photos, or send photos of your pie once it's come out of the oven. If you put them into the Transition Stirling Facebook group, or straight to me, and then I can show everyone. I'm especially interested to see how Rosie's looks when that's done. That's going to be the prettiest of the lot.
Are you on
sorry?
Do you take Twitter as well?
I'll take a picture.
No, Twitter, sorry.
Twitter, we're on Twitter. Yes, we're on Twitter, Instagram. Yeah, anywhere you like. Twitter, Instagram. I'm sure Gia really wants us to get onto TikTok soon as well. She's always going on about TikTok.
I'm just going to tweet right now.
Cool. Oh, nice one. Yeah, that will go with pretty much anything. It'll be fine as a meal on itself, or you can put chips, potatoes, gravy, mash, whatever, salad. And like I said, this recipe is versatile. You can make a sweet pastry really easily the same way. Was there a question there?
No, we were just saying thank you. That's great.
Good. I hope you've all. I hope you've learned something, and we'll take that away. Like I say, this will be available eventually on YouTube. I'm hopefully get around to that tomorrow, actually. So that'll go onto YouTube. Good stuff. All right. Well, I'm going to be staying on. If anyone wants to stay around and chat, then feel free. I'll stop the recording now as well.